Quranic Miracle, The Western Journey of Alexander the Great. Part 1. His westward journey to Egypt. As a preface, it is pertinent to say that there is an unnecessary controversy as to who is Zul-Qarnain, the man with two horns mentioned in the Quran. Most Quranic exegetists go by Alexander the Great, born the 20th or the 21st of July 356 BC, died the 10th or the 11th of June 323 BC. And this proposition is supported by historical facts, artifacts, and geographical pieces of evidence. The suggestions that it's Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, the first Persian Empire, circa 600–530 BC, is spurious, to say the least. His historical significance does not in any way suggest he is a great man of conquest, a fearless warrior and a civilization builder. His story doesn't march up. He has no landmarks to assert his greatness. To suggest he's Zul-Qarnain is diminutive to the value of revelation. The Zul-Qarnain, the one with two horns referred to in the Quran, must be the last conqueror who engaged the Gog and Magog before their ultimate surge over the world and civilization. It is a fact that the last undisputed king-warrior to engage them was Alexander the Great. Hypothesis in religious semantics cannot stand the rigors of empirical objectivity. The Jews knew the two contestants in question, their inquisitiveness can be just seeking to know the true account of Zul-Qarnain exploits. Because it's common knowledge that the Alexander romance has distorted facts about his real personality. And may also be the Jewish quest for knowledge about the prophetic timeline of events to come. Alexander the Great visited temples, also built some, and offer sacrifices. All these points to one thing. He believes in a supreme deity, whether he is the Egyptian Arman, or the Greek Zeus, or the Roman Jupiter, or the Persian Ahura Mazda, king of the gods. This is what Allah has done with the Gentiles. They were divinely left with statues and anthropotheistic deities for their devotions and rituals. And Alexander is a Gentile ruler. With an absent primary source of Alexander's history, the most reliable account of the Anabasis of Alexander was composed by Arrian of Nicomedia in the 2nd century AD, that is almost 300 years after the events, most probably during the reign of Hadrian, the Roman emperor from 117 to 138 AD. His Anabasis is a history of the campaigns of Alexander the Great, specifically his conquest of the Persian Empire between 336 and 323 BC. Orientalists, like in many other issues, tried to link the Quranic narration to earlier versions of the Middle Eastern redaction of Alexander romance and related literature in Syriac manuscripts translated into English in 1889. The translation was carried out by E. A. Wallace Budge from a dialect of Middle Aramaic. In the early 20th century, Andrew Rooney Anderson asserts that the findings of the philologists imply that the source of the Quran's story of Zul-Qarnain is the Alexander romance, a thoroughly embellished compilation of Alexander's exploits from Hellenistic and early Christian sources, which underwent numerous expansions and revisions for 2,000 years, throughout antiquity and the Middle Ages. See reference 1. Allah the Almighty said, "We know indeed that they say, it is a man that teaches him. The tongue of him they wickedly point to is notable foreign, while this is Arabic pure and clear." Quran 16 verse 103. The least to say is that there are out there, other Hellenistic and Christian sources that see Alexander as a man of God as depicted by the Quran and not a polytheist. Another eyesore for Muslim literalists is his mentorship by Aristotle the philosopher. Wouldn't accepting him as a man of God be supporting indirectly philosophy? Is the idea not a thumb up for philosophers if they can mentor such a great man? More especially in these contemporary times, when the impotency of philosophy as a useful source of knowledge is exposed and its usefulness outgrown. Stephen Hawking, died 2018, wrote, "Until this time, most of the natural scientists were busy developing modern theories looking for what the universe should ask, why. On the other hand, we see philosophers whose main concern was the question, why. They could not keep pace with developments and advancement in scientific theories." In the 18th century AD, philosophers considered all human knowledge with science the field of work, and they were discussing questions such as, was this universe beginning? But, in the 19th and 20th centuries, science became complicated and computationally accurate for philosophers or others except for a few specialists. As a result, philosophers have retreated to look at fashions so much that Wittgenstein, the most famous philosopher of this century, said, "The only concern that remains for philosophy is the analysis of language." See reference, 2. Nevertheless, the vital historical role of philosophy cannot be eclipsed. It's on the shoulders of these early philosophers that human intellect reached the tremendous advancement in science that mankind is experiencing now. The Quran charged that the Torah and Gospel are true words of God, yet, only unreliably corrupted, hence the need for its intervention in matters of accuracy as a pure revelation, unadulterated book of revelation. In the same sense, philosophy could once be another right way for humans to think their way out of the disarray and confusion found in the primitive facultative logic and reasoning. Without questioning, Alexander the Great being the two horns one referred to in the Quran, one would still ask, what value has the Quran then added in his story, or what misinformation has it cleared in the discourse? Before we can say anything, let us look at the chronological sequence of Alexander's western conquest and journey, which can be summarized as follows. A. 336 BC, Darius III becomes king of Persia. And the murder of King Philip II, heralding the ascension of Alexander to the throne of Macedonia. B. 335 BC, Alexander campaigns on the Danube. Revolt and destruction of Thebes. C. 334 BC, Alexander crosses into Asia Minor. Battle of the Granicus. The capture of Miletus and Halicarnassus. D. 333 BC, episode of the Gordian Knot. Battle of Issus. E. 332 BC, siege of Tyre. The capture of Gaza. Alexander enters Egypt. F. 331 BC, Alexander visits the temple at Shiva. He was crowned with two horns there by the chief priest, the symbol of power and great warrior, some said the symbol of the Pharaoh of Egypt. When Alexander destroyed Tyre, most of the towns on the route to Egypt quickly capitulated. He then advanced on Egypt in later 332 BC, where he was welcomed as a liberator. He was at Memphis, the capital city of ancient Egypt, then went to the Mediterranean seashore and founded Alexandria, then continued his expedition by the seashore to Marsa Matruh. Marsa Matruh, an ancient city about 240 kilometers west of Alexandria. From there he went further southwest inland to Shiva Oasis in the Libyan desert, where he met the priests who proclaimed him the new Pharaoh of Egypt. He had a solitary session with the chief priest without the attendance of his generals. Henceforth, the currency depicted him adorned with the horns of Arman, as a symbol of his authority. Western historians claimed that he was made the son of the deity Arman at the oracle of Shiva. They claimed that Alexander often referred to Zeus-Ammon as his true father. This is strange, as the tradition is that pharaohs are considered the representatives of Arman and under his supervision, they do exercise power. Otherwise, any claims of sonship should be metaphorical, not biological. This kind of legendary tales transcended to form the nucleus of deity-sonship relationship found in later-date Christian epistemology. Now let us look at the Quranic account of the events, so far, in chapter 18 verses 83 to 88 of his western journey. Allah said, "They are asking you about Zul-Qarnain. Say, I will rehearse to you something of his mention. Various robust of Alexander wearing 2 horns of a ram, a lion headgear and an elephant crown. These are symbols depicting his authority. That is of the Pharaoh of Egypt, the king of Persia and the king of Sindh Valley civilization. Today, 2,340 years after the death of Alexander the Great, his life history is a subject of great concern and controversy at the same time. Modern critics are still asking and in search of the true account. Lionel Pearson noted, the histories of Alexander's campaigns written by his contemporaries have not survived intact. It is, therefore, a matter of special concern to every student of Alexander to find out what sources were used by the later writers who offer continuous narratives of the expedition: Arrian, Plutarch, Diodorus, Quintus Curtius, and Justin. He added, Justin's brief summary is of little value to the critical historian, and Diodorus and Quintus Curtius, who frequently agree in details, are almost certainly both dependent, directly or indirectly, on the romantic and rhetorical account of Cleitarchus. These 3 writers tell us nothing themselves about their sources or their critical methods. Plutarch, on the other hand, cites a large number of authors, but, as he says himself, he is writing not histories but lies. He makes no claim to be critical of his sources, and any anecdote which illustrates some aspect of Alexander's character is welcome to him no matter from what source it comes. Arrian, like Plutarch, points out that many divergent accounts of Alexander have been written. There is no one about whom more people have written or with greater disagreement among themselves, but he announces his intention of following 2 sources, Ptolemy and Aristobulus, accepting their word without any question when they are in agreement and, when they disagree, choosing the version which seems to him more convincing and more worth the telling. This intractable historical enigma can only be solved with a direct revelation from heavens, likewise, with proof that it is not just another hoax of lies. This explains the quest by Jews to learn from a probable prophet, as they may assume, who appeared in the hinterland of Arabia about everything obscured, a prophet conscientiously anticipated by the people of the book. I don't believe the view saying that their inquisition is to test how genuinely the prophet is, rather than to provide an accurate account of what has been a great mystery and marvel, for his account would have a direct bearing of things to come in the future. Allah said, Verily we established him in the land and gave him unto everything a way. Verse 84. From 336 to 323 BC, for almost 14 years Alexander has conquered the 3 cradles of ancient human civilizations, the Pharaonic, Nile civilization, the Sumerian, Euphrates civilization, and the Indus River civilization, all squashed and put under his feet. He built about 24 cities and garrisons bearing his name in every region he conquered. Alexandria city of Egypt is the most popular. In his army were engineers, architects, and many other specialists. He built a 1-kilometer causeway entire from the mainland to the island, which reached an average width of about 60 meters for his army to attack and seize it. He was young, energetic, courageous, a great warrior, a motivator, a mobilizer, a just leader, sympathetic and firm. He's intelligent and religious. A man of his age and social status should be thinking about life, money and women. Never, Alexander was rather conquering nations and destroying demagogues at that prime age. The strength is incredible. It's God's plan and work, no doubt. He therefore followed a way, verse 85. He set out from Macedonia, fighting his way through Asia Minor by means and power despite the greater numbers of his Persian adversaries. In 334 BC Alexander crosses into Asia Minor. He defeated Darius II, in the Battle of the Granicus, then captured Miletus and Halicarnassus. Till, when he reached the setting place of the sun, he found it setting in a muddy spring, and found a people thereabout. We said, O Zul-Qarnain! Either punish or show them kindness. verse 86. Pickthall translated it as, in a muddy spring, while Yusuf Ali, as, in a spring of murky water. Ainin Hami Atan means a spring of dark water, which is found Shiva. It is the only farthermost oasis with the abundance of spring waters, some forming large lakes of different salinity and opacity. A particular lake, Lake Fatanis, is famous for its sun-drenched beach, an awesome spectacular view that attracts thousands of tourists despite the remoteness to the oasis, among other things, to watch the sunset. The sun appears to be setting in murky dark waters in the horizon. A perfect description of the Quranic word for a big lake. This in contrast to the blue and crystal clear waters of the sea. What is more astonishing is seeing such a panoramic view of sun setting in a body of water in an unexpected place right in the heart of a vast desert. The ancient city of Shiva. There was the Oracle Temple, also known as Arman Revelation Temple. The sunrise is equally spectacular. It dates back to the 26th dynasty of pharaohs, from 663 to 525 B. This temple was visited by Alexander in 331 BC. It's here that historical sources cited the crowning of Alexander as the Pharaoh of Egypt with full authority to rule and dispense justice. He met in Shiva Oasis, a secluded civilization. In fact, it is the farthest known settlement of people in the ancient world. Their end of the world, to be precise. He found some people in the community committing an abomination so obnoxious that their punishment demands a sort of harsh handling. It is said that some people of Shiva had a serious sexual disorientation, whereby homosexuality involving male minors was socially acceptable, with official marriages sometimes arranged and conducted. This tradition has survived centuries until when it was outlawed by King Fuad I, born 1868, died 28 April 1936, when Egypt began to assert firmer control after a 1928 visit to the oasis by the king, who berated the locals for a certain vice and specified punishments to bring Sawan behavior in line with Egyptian morals. A similar incidence happened about 2,259 years before, as decreed by Alexander the Great. This is an indirect indictment of homosexuality, and that the doers should be punished to stop this despicable act. He Zul-Qarnain said, "Whoever doth wrong him shall we punish, then shall he be sent back to his Lord, and he will punish him with a punishment unheard of before." Verse 87. The Quranic miracle here is evident. 1. The sun-drenched lake in the middle of a vast desolate desert. 2. Addressed by God at Shiva by the epithet Zul-Qarnain, exactly in the place and time he was crowned the Pharaoh of Egypt at the murky lake. 3. Shiva is the furthest west all historians agreed Alexander reached. 4. From Shiva he went straight back to the next expedition, see Part 2. No way, an unlettered Arab who has never left the Arabian Peninsula can know these historical and geographical details. The geographical, social, and historical depth of the revelation cannot be but from the same source of revelations these historians are ready to accept as coming from the ancient chief priest. They believed that the whole expedition into this desolate region devoid of any economic or political power was because of the oracle through which Alexander the Great consulted for. Alexander is not a prophet nor a messenger of God. Yet, he believes in a deity, the king of all gods, and consulted priests, rabbis, and monks according to Western narrations. At the point of reaching the furthermost western destination, which we now understand to be the Shiva oasis, the Quran declared that God spoke to Alexander. "We said, O Zul-Qarnain, the one with two horns," with the plural pronoun, typical of God's actions through intermediaries. This alludes to God speaking to him through the chief priest. Allah knows better. No nation came to pass that was not without an admonisher. Allah said, Verily we have sent thee, Muhammad, in truth as a bearer of glad tidings and as a warner, and there never was a people without a warner having lived among them in the past. Quran 35 verse 24. And every nation or civilization have their peculiar form of religious devotion. Allah said, To each among you have we prescribed a law and a way of life. If Allah had so willed he would have made you a single people, but his plan is to test you in what he hath given you, so strive as in a race in all virtues. The goal of you all is to Allah, it is he that will show you the truth of the matters in which ye dispute. Quran chapter 5 verse 48. In Solomon's time, statues and images were a fashion not forbidden. Allah said, They the jinn made for him Solomon what he willed, synagogues and statues, basins like wells and boilers built into the ground. Give thanks, O house of David. Few of my bondmen are thankful. Quran chapter 34 verse 13. Therefore, it will wrong to judge ancient civilizations and nations with our Islamic standard, code of law, and way of life. Islam is the end of road of human theological developmental evolution, therefore, one cannot expect humans in the infancy stage of self-consciousness to understand everything or even anything about God. No doubt through the ages, Allah has gradually introduced the human to pristine monotheism across anthropotheism. That is what ancient people's brain can accommodate. In this story, we see how Allah described the remotest place known to humans as the end of the world where the sun sets. Then the knowledge of the spherical nature of Earth is not known. Paradoxically, still today in the 21st century there are people who think the Earth is flat. Yet, except in the Quran, where Allah said, He is the creator of the heavens and the earth, He has made for you pairs from among yourselves and pairs among cattle, by this means does He multiply you, there is nothing whatever like unto Him, and He is the one that hears and sees all things. Quran 42 verse 11. Unfortunately, every human followership of religion has retained some vestiges of anthropotheism. Even among some Muslims today, some of that influence has made some sects to cart that course of interpretation of an anthropomorphic God, exalted He remains. Allah knows best. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.